Hello, I'm Stibby, and this is my YouTube channel. I have been a big fan of musicals for many years now, and something I've always found curious is how few musical TV shows there are. Now, there have been a couple that have popped up more recently. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was obviously extremely successful for some time, and the show Gallivant was not as successful for much less time, although it has achieved a sort of cult status by being generally pretty good.
Baby, you bet you're gonna get the punishment we deserve. Off with a shot. That's a deal. You're a beefcake happy meal.
Then, of course, you have the jukebox musical Glee, which was extremely successful for a great many years. But I'm not here to talk about those because they are significantly more popular and may actually attract an audience to my videos. You see, there was a slight push in the year 1990 to create a musical TV genre, with a couple of shows premiering in the same season. Those shows being Whole High and the topic of my video today, Cop Rock. I don't want to imply that these were the first musical shows ever. As far as I know, that title goes to 1968's That's Life.
What a day to see the pretty city scenery. Baby, that's living. Baby, that's life.
Or possibly 1965's The Monkees, if you count it. And there were a few attempts throughout the 70s and 80s to create a musical TV show as well, but Cop Rock and Whole High premiered in the same season on two major networks, which I think is interesting considering how rare an attempt at this concept was, and honestly still is. Cop Rock has been largely forgotten by most people, and some other people probably wanted to forget it, because it's frequently been voted one of the worst television shows of all time since its airing in 1990. As a lover of both musicals and bizarre cultural artifacts, I have been really interested in Cop Rock for a long time. I first heard about it many years ago, and since then I've had a lot of questions about it. Is it really that bad? How does it handle the whole cop thing? Is the music consistently good? Despite my questions, I was always too nervous about its reputation to actually sit down and watch the show. But now that I have this channel, I have the perfect excuse to do so, and I'm really excited to jump into the bizarre failed experiment that was Cop Rock. Before getting into the video proper, I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Artie, or Scrambles Yoke on Twitter, at least as far as Twitter is even still somewhat relevant. They did the new avatar that I've been using to represent myself in videos that I used for this video and the Suffering video. They are an artist, and they sometimes open up commissions. I will put their Twitter handle, a link to their webcomic, and maybe their coffee in the description to this video.
Name this song and the artist. Although you're never near, your voice I often hear, 'cause I'm so lonely. Baby,
Okay, that's
I'm
enough,
Frankie,
gang.
so top.
Just listen to me. I don't like a lot of talking, and I hate singing in the unit. You got that?
Cop Rock has an ensemble cast encompassing all the members of Police Precinct, as well as a number of more public-facing officials in a fictional Los Angeles. A good place to start with character introductions is with the captain of the main precinct, Captain John Hollander, played by Larry Joshua, who has played a cop in everything from NYPD Blue to the movie Cradle to the Grave. Larry has played a few roles that aren't cops, though. Most notably to me would be Glazer, from the 1981 slasher film, The Burning. In his precinct, every cop has a partner, as is customary in police procedural dramas, and I believe real life. So you have a few different pairs that make up the main focus of the show. The first pair being Officer Vicky Quinn and Officer Andy Campo. Vicky is shown throughout the series to be a very trusting and nice person, played by Anne Bobby, who has done some voice acting work, most notably Bridget Tenenbaum in BioShock. Vicky, of course, has a will they or won't they with her partner Andy, who is played by David Giannopoulos, who also plays a cop in quite a bit, although not much that I've seen. But from what I can tell, he seems to be doing pretty good as a character actor and has credits as recently as 2024. Also, fun tidbit, I thought he was David Boreanaz of Angel fame for most of episode 1. As for Andy's will they or won't they with Vicky, there are complications in the fact that she is currently married to Detective Lieutenant Ralph Ruskin, who is the forensic expert for the department, played by Ron McClarty, who also plays a judge across multiple different Law & Order series and did the voice for the General in Courage the Cowardly Dog. The second major pair is the not-by-the-book detective Vincent LaRusso and his old partner William Donald Potts. LaRusso is a cop who is early on identified as someone who is frequently in trouble for excessive use of force. He's also the driving force for what I would consider the main plot of the show, but we'll get there in later sections. LaRusso is played by Peter Onorati, who had a pretty major run as the character Jeffrey Mumford on the show SWAT, which I know basically nothing about, but I know a little bit more about the work he did on DC animated shows, including voicing Robot Man in the original Teen Titans cartoon.
An ambush came out of nowhere. Negative, man! They can't have gotten far.
LaRusso is cast in constant conflict throughout the series with his former partner, Donald Potts, played by William Thomas Jr., who would probably be most well known for playing Vanessa Huxtable's fiancé in the final season of The Cosby Show. For the third pair, you have Officer Franklin Rose and his newbie partner, Joseph Gaines. This pair sees veteran cop Rose having to basically start over with his new partner, the young, quite naive Joseph Gaines, in the first episode, following the death of Rose's old longtime partner, Gilbert Braden. Rose is played by James McDaniel, who's had one of the more explosive careers since Cop Rock, playing Arthur Fancy in 167 episodes of NYPD Blue, as well as Earl Grant in Spike Lee's Malcolm X movie. Gaines is played by Mick Murray, who has been in episodes of things here and there, including an episode of Angel, which I swore I didn't know when I said that Andy looked like David Boreanaz. Franklin Rose's original partner, Gilbert Braden, is worth mentioning briefly here as well. Even if he doesn't make it out of the first episode, his death is still relevant to the entire rest of the series. There are a few other notable cops throughout the series, but that's what I would call the main cast. In terms of public officials, you have Police Chief Roger Kendrick, played by Ronnie Cox, whose career stretches back to the 70s, including major roles in RoboCop and Total Recall. You also have the Chief's right hand, Commander Warren Osborne, played in most episodes by Vaughn D. Curtis Hall, who also played Captain Prince in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet, and the Daily Bugle's Ben Urich from Netflix's Daredevil series from 2015. The last major character is fictional Los Angeles Mayor Louise Plank, played by Barbara Bosson, who was a major character on Hill Street Blues, the show that inspired Cop Rock when it was suggested early in the production of Hill Street Blues that it be a musical. Barbara Bosson also had a long career dating all the way back to the late 60s, but unfortunately passed in February of 2023 at the age of 83. Well, that's all the main cast. Another name worth mentioning in regard to this show is that of Randy Newman, who wrote the main theme of the show as well as a lot of the music for the first episode. Speaking of that first episode.
He's guilty, Judge, he's guilty. You could see it in his eyes. He did the crime and now he's gotta pay. He's guilty, Judge, he's guilty. We have seen through all his lies. The time has come to put this boy away.
Cop Rock starts in just the most striking way, with a handheld camera bust into a drug den with lots of yelling, a screaming woman having her baby taken away, and a cop engaging in some light police brutality. I honestly thought I had started watching the wrong show at first. I kept checking to make sure that I clicked the right file, until the prisoners broke into a rap song along with neighborhood onlookers about how they have the power in the streets.
That's right, chump. Better do what they say. Bust your ass all night, bust your ass all day. You get shot through the head, they gonna haul you away. Put you in a garbage can. In these streets, we got the power. We got the power. We got the power.
And while this was all pretty silly and definitely a shift, the rap at least had some intensity to it, but the intensity broke completely when it switches entirely to the show's opening, which is an incredibly cheesy Randy Newman number.
Tears and rain, precious memories of years go by.
There is so much tonal whiplash in just like the first 5 minutes of this show, and that never really goes away. The mood of the show is constantly wild. Although, this opening drug bust does send shockwaves that are felt through the entire rest of the series, so it is relevant at least. The first thing you see after the opening is the initial hearing about those detained from the drug bust, where it's decided that all male prisoners will be released due to overcrowding in male prisons. This courtesy, however, does not extend to all the female prisoners, notably including the woman who had her baby taken away in the beginning. One of the storylines that comes up a few times throughout the show starts here, where Vicky takes a personal interest in the prisoner with the baby whose name is Patty, and wants to get her released so that she can be with her child. This informs a lot of Vicky's storylines and characters as the show goes on. The second, and even more important development that comes from this bust, at least as it pertains to the main storyline of this show, is in one of the male prisoners named Tyrone Weeks, who, shortly after being dismissed, shoots and kills a police officer in a shootout on the street. This event informs major storylines for basically every character on the show. Right away, you have the police chief trying to secure funds to build more prisons, and the mayor saying that she intends to fight to secure those funds in a press conference, using the shooting as reasoning. You also have Rose dealing with the depression of the loss of his partner, who was the cop that was shot in the shootout. And that's all before Tyrone Weeks is found, which kicks off a number of other storylines.
What happened?
We got him.
What do you mean you got him?
Tried to escape and we nailed him, man.
Later in the episode, Weeks is found by Gaines and his original partner before getting transferred to Rose, who fuck up the bust royally by failing to procure a warrant before entering Weeks' home. LaRusso is called to the scene, and he is not happy. So he sends Gaines out of the room, and then proceeds to extrajudiciously murder a handcuffed Tyrone Weeks, which implicates himself as well as his partner, Potts, who remains in the room as he does so. Dealing with the fallout of this basically informed LaRusso and Potts' arc through the entire show. The cover-up to protect LaRusso also implicates Ralph in forensics, who chooses to hide all evidence against LaRusso's claims of what happened. The episode also takes some time to establish that Vicky is in love with her partner and not happy in her marriage with Ralph. None of this is particularly surprising. Unhappy marriages and police misconduct are the bread and butter of police procedural dramas like this. I was somewhat surprised by the ending of the episode, though, in which Patty sells her baby to buy drugs. Cop Rock in general is equal parts comedy and drama, so you may be wondering how the baby selling is tackled by the show. It's a situation that's exaggerated enough that it could slot into either comedy or drama with relative ease. Well, the answer the show comes to is to kinda do both. You get this super silly song about baby dealing when the story comes back, but the show also doesn't shy away from showing Patty's emotions and how much things are stacked against her. And these types of tonal issues are not just present in this one storyline, but are consistent throughout the show.
Now put yourself in our hands. So you shot an unarmed man. We'll make you such a hero. All the women gonna love you. All the world over, everyone will be saying, this guy's bigger than Ronald Reagan.
To start this section off, I want to give you just a taste of some of the strange musical choices made for serious moments in the series. Let's say you want to do a rap song by a gang about how they don't care that they've just killed a random bystanding child. You want it to be tough and pretty chilling, actually. A real "the future belongs to me" type moment. What might that song sound like? Well, it sounds like this.
And I don't care about a punk that's dying or about the tears that his family is crying. You know it's a drive-by when you see me passing. I'm trained to kill just like a ninja assassin.
Life in the hood ain't no piece of pie. Anybody can die when the bullets fly.
But okay, it's the year 1990. Gangster rap is still in its infancy. NWA just broke out a couple of years ago. Maybe this is what the most dangerous rap sounded like at the time, at least in the minds of primetime TV executives. So we'll take another example. Let's say you've just heard about a horrific sexual assault committed by a man on a college campus, and all the female officers have to go undercover at the campus to catch the guy, and they have a song about it. Did that song sound like this to you?
He's gonna find himself alone behind the enemy line. Hey, mister, I got something for you. Come on, come and get it.
And these are both just strange executions on things the show wants you to take seriously. Cop Rock spends a lot of time unsure of how seriously to take itself, which, to be fair, is an issue a lot of dramedies suffer from. The show kind of wants to be a gritty police drama, but it also understands the inherent absurdity of its very concept, and occasionally leans pretty far into it. In just that baby selling storyline, you have a song about selling babies that goes like this.
And lawyers ain't the only game in town. That's a migraine and a hat. I won't put you through. I'm the baby merchant. Tots are us. I give you all the service and no damn fuss. Give the baby merchant just a week or two. I'll have your baby for you.
Then you have moments of the mom being emotional and being lied to by police. The entire crux of that storyline is about a baby who is sold by a drug-addicted mother to a loving family because she doesn't have the support she needs to raise the baby, then taken back by police under the mother's request, prosecuting both the mother and the family that bought the baby for engaging with what is essentially an illegal slavery ring, taking the baby from potentially a loving home and from her biological mother and putting her into foster care, making sure nobody's happy. I mean, that's some dark shit, but you also have...
It ain't a question of morality. I'm not concerned with any trumped up illegality. We're just one big happy family. It's a pleasure doing business the American way.
Of course, drama and comedy are only two of the genres related to this series. Cop Rock's status as a musical is by far and away the most interesting thing about it, and as a musical, the music itself is worth talking about.
You can chain me down like a junkyard hound, bury me 6 feet in the ground, but you can't keep a good man down, no, you can't keep a good man down.
The music is, weirdly good for the most part. It's not all good.
Wanna go bumpy, bumpy. I wanna go woozy, woo, woo, woo. Gotta go bumpy, bumpy. Bumpy, bumpy with you.
But it's a higher hit rate than you might think. There are a lot of different late 80s musical genres mixed in there. There are rock ballads, slow jams, more typical musical numbers, jazz numbers, early hip-hop, country tunes. A lot of it is pretty corny, but most of it works really well. Some of my favorites obviously start with the Baby Dealer song.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, I also like the song Patty sings to her baby before selling it. It's one of the more emotional numbers of the show, and I think it works.
Close your eyes now, little girl. They don't wanna hear you crying. You never had a chance, you never had a chance.
I also like some of the more fun musical numbers in the show. like the Chief's solo number about wanting to be a cowboy and feeling out of time.
City lights don't shine for me, they never have, my friend. I ache to hear the doggies sing again.
As well as my personal favorite from the whole show, LaRusso's Can't Keep a Good Man Down.
Come on, give me what you got now. Step up, take your best shot now.
Actually, all of LaRusso's numbers are kinda great, because I also really like To Live and Die a Cop.
Now they treat me like I'm a special. I wish to God they'd stop. 'Cause all I ever wanted, all I ever dreamed of, was just to live and die a cop.
These numbers are both sonically appealing to me and inform the characters that sing them. So while I may not agree with everything said in any of these songs,
Give me back my gun. I just did what had to be done.
they're very good within the context of the show. Honestly, most of the songs I dislike from Cop Rock, I do so for tonal reasons over sonic ones. Your mileage may definitely vary depending on how much tolerance you have for 80s cheese, but I enjoyed a lot of it.
I'll clean it up. She's here to promise you. I'll clean it up. She knows just what to do. I'll clean it up. Just vote for her in 1992.
Cop Rock only got 11 episodes before its cancellation, so a brief rundown of basically what happens after episode 1 should help lead into better exploring how this show handles its themes, its general positions, etc. From this point on, I'm going to be doing full spoilers. I'm not sure it really matters for Cop Rock, but I like to give fair warning anyway. For broad strokes, it's probably better to start at different characters and threads left by the end of the first episode, and follow them forward into their main storylines. Starting with Vincent LaRusso, who, as mentioned, did the extrajudicious murder at the end of episode 1 that kicked off what could probably be considered the main plot line of the show in general. He, at first, convinces his partner Potts to lie and tell everyone that he didn't see LaRusso kill Weeks, and Ralph in Forensic hides evidence for him. But eventually, the captain gets Potts to testify to the truth, and Ralph's wife, Vicky, learns that Ralph covered up evidence and convinces him to tell the captain as well. So a not insignificant part of the season revolves around preparation for LaRusso's upcoming trial and the fallout of the crime on the department. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the trial is big news, and LaRusso is turned into somewhat of a Punisher-type hero in certain sects of the population. And even more importantly, in certain sects of the police force.
When you're in trouble, you got brothers around. Nobody gonna drag you down.
And pity the fool that tries to tangle with you, 'cause he'll be hurting.
And with heroes comes villains. In this case, that villain to these people is LaRusso's ex-partner Potts, who many of the police see as being a traitor for testifying against LaRusso. You know, the thin blue line and all that. Most of LaRusso and Potts' stories are about dealing with the fallout of this trial and perception of them, with LaRusso buying his own hype at parts, reckoning with how many racists love him at other parts, and everything up to him lying in court about not shooting Weeks while he was handcuffed.
I did what a cop should do. I held my ground, and as much as one man could, I tried to make the city a little safer.
At the same time, you have Potts dealing with the police talking about him behind his back as well as loudly to his face in the break room.
Damn, the faithless man. He'll get what's coming to him, yeah. If there's any justice, the stick can trade us through. I'll see to it.
And even refusing to stay guard at his family's house, putting them in danger. So, obviously, Potts has his own internal struggles about whether or not to tell the truth about LaRusso. He feels overwhelmed either way and wonders if it's even worth it to testify with what his family's going through. He does eventually decide to testify after a heart-to-heart conversation with Commander Osborne, who's the only person who even kind of understands what he's going through. But unfortunately, it doesn't really end up mattering to the case, as LaRusso ends up being cleared anyway and coming back to work in the last episode.
No, see, you're the one that's wrong. Yeah. What you're going through, Donnie, you brought on yourself, okay? You trusted the wrong people, and now you're blaming me for the consequences. But I'm willing to forgive and forget, and if I do, so will everybody else.
So you've forgiven me?
That's right. Now just think about it. You don't have to give me an answer right away.
To move on to one of the other pairs, another season-wide storyline that took place was about Vicky and Ralph's marital issues, and how they're exacerbated by her will they or won't they relationship with her partner Andy, and by Ralph's insecurities. Ralph constantly thinks she's cheating with Andy and pushes her away because of it. To be fair, her and Andy do have an obvious mutual attraction, but no actual cheating occurs. This all reaches a fever pitch when Ralph says that she has to request a new partner or he wants a divorce. After fighting this for an episode or two, she eventually does request a transfer in exchange for Ralph agreeing to go to couples therapy. But unfortunately, her new partner is a pretty hardcore misogynist.
But you know and I know that if something heavy goes down... Nah, I better not say it.
What? No, if something heavy goes down, what then?
Our first instincts are gonna be that I go in first, that's all.
And Andy's new partner is, even worse, unattractive to him.
Yes, sir.
To be fair, Andy's new partner does later try to assault him in a car, but he dislikes her way before that, and I kind of feel like the show only sees that as a problem because she's unattractive to him. Even then, they don't treat it that seriously. I don't know if you guys remember that Bumpty Bumpty number I played a little bit of earlier, but this is what it's about. As for Vicky, her and her husband go into counseling, but he eventually asks for a divorce anyway. I'm sure they had more back and forth will they or won't they planned with both Ralph and Andy for Vicky, but they didn't get to explore that because the show was cancelled, so this is basically where the storyline ends. Then you have the third team, Gaines and Rose, who I'll have more to say about in the next section when I dive into themes, but as for running storylines, their main one is just figuring out how to work together. Rose in particular has to figure out if he's even willing to open up to a new partner after his old one was killed, and Gaines is a newbie cop who needs a lot more guidance than Rose is interested in giving at this point in his career. If you've seen basically any cop drama before, you'll have seen a similar storyline play out. It's a trope that's been done to the point of parody. But it's not uninteresting here. It helps that Gaines and Rose are two of the more likable characters, so watching their relationship develop can be fun at times.
You're not a fool. You got a good heart.
We also have the higher-ranking officials, like the Chief, Commander Osborne, Captain Hollander, and the Mayor. The Chief will also probably be talked about more when I talk about various social issues in the themes section, because his biggest running storyline is just about being an old-school cop and saying racist, homophobic, and misogynistic things that get him into trouble as a now public official.
Damn it, Ozzy. You don't think I know you're black?
Yes. When you talk about getting black malcontents off your back, that's just what I think.
Hell, Ozzy, when I talk about black people, I don't mean you.
He wants to completely stand by LaRusso the entire time. He gets in fights with people who are trying to generally protect his image because he doesn't like being told what to do, and he generally just says whatever is on his mind at any given time. Basically, he's your typical police chief, and his second-in-command, Commander Osborne, has to deal with it. Which is basically Osborne's biggest running storyline, besides just generally being as high-ranking as he is in the police force as a black man. He also has a few heart-to-hearts with Potts to try to get him to tell the truth in court about LaRusso when he's having doubts. Captain Hollander doesn't really have any major season-long storylines himself besides trying to balance the unit and his family. He is, however, involved in most everyone else's storylines as the captain of the unit. Most especially LaRusso's, where he's the main driving force in the investigation of Tyrone Weeks' murder.
It's more than win, LaRusso. You did it, and I'm gonna get you.
You're crazy.
Believe it.
Basically every police conduct and even interpersonal issue comes through him as the captain. He even has a song about it at one point called Quit Your Bitching.
Quit bitching. I heard it all before. Quit bitching. Don't wanna hear no more.
And at last we have the mayor, whose season-long storyline is about her trying to run for Senate. She campaigns, makes political speeches, and at one point gets plastic surgery, which starts her love affair with Chief Cox, who is now interested in her because he's the worst. He goes from calling her an ugly, foul buzzard to being in love with her after the surgery.
You aren't the foulest-looking buzzard beak Gila monster I ever saw. That's you, Mayor Blake?
In the flesh. Do I take that as a compliment, Chief?
Yes, ma'am. Darn right.
I think it starts as commentary, but it's not really played that way through most of the runtime, and the romance mostly ends up being played straight. At least until later when he becomes unhappy with the relationship because he doesn't like her telling him what to do, even though she is kind of his boss.
I suppose it was bound to happen.
What was bound to happen?
You and me. One little blip on the old radar. Honeymoon's over.
Most everything in the season relates to or comes back to the LaRusso trial. But other than that, the show is mostly just a normal procedural cop drama, just with musical numbers. Every episode focuses on a case of the week, or maybe two. You have stalkers, gang violence, homeless relocating, whatever the case of the week is in relation to. Each coming with its own unique issues and themes, from racism to the role of police. And how those things are handled can be as varied as the show itself.
Don't get me wrong, I keep an open mind. I know what's what when your butt's on the line. And when you need a man to cover your back, where blue is blue and black is black.
Cop Rock tries to tackle a number of themes throughout its lone season. While it was maybe not as impossible to make a cop show in the year 1990 without addressing issues of racism, it would still be a challenge, and the show, to its credit, does try to tackle those issues frequently and individually, with notably basically the entirety of episode 8 being about racism on the force. Of course, the face of police racism they choose for the episode isn't one of the main cast. It's a new guy they bring in named Detective Miller, who is cartoonishly racist for a bit until he's forced to retire by the unit's captain. The episode in question is about a child who's killed in a low-income neighborhood that Detective Miller doesn't want to investigate because the child is black and the neighborhood is underfunded. That Blue is Blue song that I played a snippet of at the beginning of this section happens because Rose asked Miller to do his job and rightfully identifies that it's not getting done because of the race of the victim and the neighborhood the murder happened in. At the same time, you have LaRusso's old partner Potts and his family getting racist harassment because Potts is set to testify against LaRusso. So the cops that were assigned to protect him decide not to get back at him for breaking the thin blue line. Which I mentioned earlier, but I didn't fully mention the extent of harassment he receives. People literally burn crosses in his front yard, unimpeded or possibly aided by the police that are charged with his protection. things get bad enough that he ends up being approached by representatives from the black Muslim community, who offer to give him their protection in place of the police force. He refuses, and this storyline doesn't really go anywhere, but it is an interesting example of not officially sanctioned groups stepping up in areas where police fail or refuse to do a job adequately. The fact that the unarmed man that LaRusso shot was black was not lost on the show either, with the press addressing it a number of times, including in their big press musical number about the trial.
Would you agree this case has racial overtone? The cameras are rolling, so bare your soul for the record.
And a lot of LaRusso's fans are militant racists, as shown by many of his interactions with them. Although the show does go out of its way to make sure that we know that LaRusso doesn't consider himself a racist or feel there was any racist intent behind the murder.
I know that the LA Police Department has its share of racist cops. I'm not one of them. See, to this cop, there's only two kinds of people. Good guys and bad guys, and my job is to go after the bad guys.
The chief should also be addressed in basically any conversation about various bigotries, as he had some off-color remarks through the whole series.
Even though from what I can tell, it's made up mostly of drug addicts, crybabies, and homosexuals who are intent on tearing down all our traditional American values.
Leading to a scene in episode 10 where the chief has a dream in which he's tried for his racism. Which I figure I should mention. I don't know if you could say it was done particularly tastefully, though.
Are you a racist, hunky, yellow-breasted chicken bastard, yes or no?
I am what I am.
Issues of homophobia and misogyny on the force and in society in general are also addressed throughout the show. You have the chief again, who gets in trouble for homophobia as well as racism in episode 8. But more interestingly, the mayor's assistant through the whole show is actually a closeted gay man. He even gets his own storyline about it in episode 7, where he wants to resign as to not hurt the mayor's campaign, because he's about to get outed by a large expose written by a gay journalist who wants to show that there are gay people at every level in the government. The mayor has this expose quashed by threatening to have the journalist's husband deported unless he abandons the story. This isn't really brought up again, although I assume it would be if the show had continued, as it's easily the darkest thing she had done in this show up to this point.
Never filed a state or federal tax return. Never got a green card. Mr. Barry, if I pick up that phone, the INS and the IRS will see to it that he's kicked out and never returns.
That's blackmail.
Yes.
For misogyny, you have Vicky's new partner for an interface example, but the chief and LaRusso don't treat women amazingly either. LaRusso goes from dating a much younger professional mud wrestler whom he respects so little that at one point he sells her to a drug dealer to get a leg up on him.
He wants a party with you, baby.
What do you want?
I want you to do it. For me.
To sleeping with the only female member of his law team in a baffling plot that involves her getting super turned on when she learns that he did in fact murder someone. There should also be mention of the B-plot of the series finale, which is about a series of sexual assaults that happen on a college campus. This is where that one bizarre Sheryl Crow song comes in from earlier. It touches a bit on how victims can be treated by police. Like, in order to get the guy, Captain Hollander manufactures a scenario for him to be in the prison on the same day as one of his victims, so she can ID him organically. It's obviously traumatic and a risky process, which is even more frustrating as he's only set free because the police fuck up evidence retrieval again. And as the episode is truncated due to being the finale, we never really get to see the consequences of all that.
You set him up. The difference is my bust will hold up. Sometimes good cops have to bend the rules, Stillman. Bad cops break them. And you're a bad cop.
Another big question that the show wrestles with by its very nature is what the role of police is and should be. And for a window as to that discussion, Gaines is a really good subject to look at. The main plot kind of glosses over Gaines, besides him being the person that fucked up Tyrone Weeks' arrest enough to void it. So it may surprise you to learn that Gaines is consistently the best cop in the unit in terms of, being a decent human being. He is one of a very small number of cops on the show that you ever actually see try to de-escalate a situation, and the only cop that complains about things like forcing homeless people to leave their camp, or really seems to give a shit about homeless people at all. He's not without his issues, like talking to Rose loudly about Motown in a way that is evidently and intently displayed to be a microaggression on the show.
Gaines, tell me something. How come whenever you talk to me about music, you always talk about the Supremes and the Temptations and the Four Tops and Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye? How come you never talk to me about the Beatles?
But Gaines just always seems like a well-meaning guy.
Who's even trying to help these people, huh? Who's giving them a chance? Nobody.
He is also consistently portrayed as a buffoon. Him messing up the Tyrone Weeks bust was not an outlier. He messes up a few routine police things throughout the show, and even gets a comedic song that further paints him as a buffoonish screw-up.
Maybe I'm slow, but I know what I know, and I know when the joke's on me.
At times it's kind of hard to tell if we're supposed to see how much he cares and say, oh, he's actually okay at this job, or if we're supposed to say, that'll get you killed, you fool. At best, I think we're looking at the intended message to be, maybe this naive young cop has a thing to teach the older crowd. But with what we got, it's hard to say for sure. Even at its best, I don't think that Cop Rock was likely to have any messaging about police defunding or anything, especially not in 1990. So, despite what was intended to come out of everything, it's nice to even have Gaines as a character questioning some stuff.
Well, tomorrow we'll move them again. Yeah, but what's the point? The point is, maybe they'll get tired of being moved and they'll go someplace else. But it doesn't solve the problem, Captain.
The Weeks case is also worth examining in this regard. While the show always condemns LaRusso for killing a handcuffed man, they also have characters like Rose, who are portrayed as nothing but likable and usually correct, saying it doesn't matter whether LaRusso is guilty or not because Weeks shot his partner.
Hey, I don't know what kind of guy he is. I just know that he took out the guy that killed my partner. I'm glad he beat the rap. I'm glad he's back.
And it's not like Weeks is ever shown in a particularly sympathetic light, so they at very least portray it as a complicated issue, which it really isn't. LaRusso premeditatedly kills someone in cold blood because the police fuck up a bust, and then the police around him protect him from that. The fact that LaRusso is immediately held up as a hero by right-wing media who start looking into movie rights and throwing parties in his honor before the trial is even over is at least interesting, if expected, commentary. I realize I'm a left-wing video essay person doing an essay on a cop show, so I'm legally obligated to use the word propaganda at least once. But the question, is Cop Rock propaganda, is just inherently ridiculous to me. I suppose it is as much as any cop show is, or at least it probably would have been if given more time and possibly more respect. As it stands, it's a bit more self-aware than other shows I've seen. I imagine that having the built-in gimmick of being a musical police procedural helps with that somewhat.
Now I can change your life. I'm an artist with a knife. Van Gogh of cold blue steel. I'll return that look of hunger, make you 10 years younger. Bring back your sex appeal. You know I'm talking about
Basically, I made this section so I could talk about a few notable cases, some cameos, and some interesting songs that I couldn't fit anywhere else, so I didn't get too derailed. Some of the musical numbers I've yet to mention include a plastic surgery number, a song where cops going undercover as sex workers solicit Johns called Choose Me, and a song where one of those Johns sings about his sexual proclivities called Tenderness that is simply wonderful.
So what if I long for a leather strap? What if I like stiletto heels running up and down my back? Or some large lady
with a heart of gold to tie me up and make me do just exactly what I'm told.
There's another primary character named Detective Bob McIntyre, played by Paul McCrane, who I haven't mentioned yet because he was a late addition and doesn't do as much in the show. He does shift assignments, gets a song or two, and at one point becomes interested in a celebrity who tries to get him to shoot her stalker for her. The storyline is not uninteresting. Gina Gershon cameos as a celebrity, and the stalker gets his own weird stalker love song, but it never comes back for the rest of the season or ties into anything else any of the other major characters are doing. I didn't want to take too much time talking about the lawyer character that LaRusso started sleeping with earlier because I wanted to keep that section moving without getting too stun-locked, but she is an absolutely wild character. She starts off as a foil to LaRusso by being in control of everything and not bending to his whims or schedules like his past relationships. However, she gets super turned on when she learns that he did kill Weeks unlawfully, and the relationship dynamic completely shifts, to the point that she ends up agreeing to have a baby for him while he's in prison.
I want you to have my kid.
Okay, Vincent.
I mentioned that Warren Osborn was played by Vondie Curtis Hall in most episodes, but in the first episode, that character is actually played by Ernie Hudson of Ghostbusters fame. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It was just kind of wild seeing Ernie Hudson in the show, and seeing that same character just played by a different person in episode 2.
I can't believe they cancel us.
Yeah, I know. I only got to sing one song.
2.
Excuse me, 1.
No, 2. You sang that one song here in the office, what do you call it? How to Love a Woman, and the song in the dream sequence where they hang me in my underwear.
You know, I can't say I was looking forward to this show that much. Cop Rock has been referenced to me as one of the worst shows of all time, and I rarely even like good procedural police dramas, but I found it pretty enjoyable for the most part. The whole thing is just so odd that it's hard to look away from. A lot of the songs are pretty good, or at least so bad they're entertaining. As an early attempt at a musical TV show, the music hit rate isn't that bad. Even widely considered good musical TV shows aren't without their flops.
Petrificus totalis, drink deeply from the chalice. Tell us what you see.
Can I say that I truly cared about the characters in Cop Rock? No, not really, but to be fair, that's pretty par for the course for me in terms of most police dramas. The shift from completely serious to absolutely ridiculous was like a fun roller coaster ride that didn't leave you grounded long enough to ask questions about anything. And if someone asked me if they should watch this show, I would say absolutely they should. I mean, come on, tell me this isn't absolute gold.
A piece of heaven for 11 grand. That's a small price to pay for a toddler today. It ain't a question of morality. I'm not concerned with any trumped up illegality. We're just one big happy family. It's a pleasure doing business the American way. I'm the baby merchant, tots are us. I give you all the service and no damn fuss. Give the baby merchant just a week or two. I'll have your baby